Welcome to this episode of our program Arab Affairs. We are just 3 days from Eid al-Adha al-Mubarak. May it be a blessed and days that are filled with all the blessings and aspirations and good deeds. And just 3 days, we are here to speak today about an important event that took place in Egypt 2 days ago. We're speaking about Egypt and definitely we'll speak about other developments in the region, but because Thursday has witnessed a huge ceremony, the launch of the first conference for Decent Life, this huge project that aims at elevating the standard of living of more than half of the Egyptian population, that is tackling the reconstruction and the elevation of the whole sectors that are directing the living conditions of people in more than 4,000 villages. About 58 million people will be benefiting from such a huge project with a cost of £700 billion. During this huge ceremony, Egypt witnessed the launching of the new republic. The president gave a huge, or a very important culmination message to the people, in which he spoke about the future of Egypt, and he spoke about lots of issues as he launched 2 important issues: the beginning of a new republic and the launching of the new republic youth union. We'll be speaking about this in our first segment. We'll be speaking about this huge initiative, this huge project in the modern history of Egypt. We'll be speaking about that. Before we delve into our discussion, let's first have a quick look on the Arab news that took place during this week, and we'll come back for more discussion.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received on Wednesday Speaker of the Kuwaiti Parliament Marzouk al-Ghanem. During the meeting, President al-Sisi praised the bilateral relations between the 2 countries as well as Egypt's keenness to develop bilateral ties. The President also said that security of the Gulf is part of the Egyptian national security. President al-Sisi also reiterated the importance of coordination among Arab states to confront the challenges facing the region. For his part, Al-Ghanem said that Kuwait values Egypt's role in preserving the security and stability of his country, in addition to its efforts to achieve the region's stability and development, as well as unifying the Arab front. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi held telephone calls with Iraqi President Barham Saleh and Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi over a deadly fire at Imam al-Hussein Hospital in southern Iraq that left at least 66 people dead and over 100 others injured. During the telephone conversations, the President offered solace to the families of the victims and wished speedy recovery for the injured, calling upon Almighty Allah to grant best of health to the Iraqi Premier and to protect the people of Iraq. Also, the Foreign Ministry extended its condolences to Iraq's government and people over the fire in the city of Al-Nasiriyah. In a statement, the ministry also offered condolences to the families of the victims, wishing injured people speedy recovery. Upon directives of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Egypt sent 3 military planes carrying medical aid to Tunisia to help alleviate burdens on the Tunisian people. This came upon the President's directives to support the Tunisian people to face the repercussions of the current crisis in the country. Officials in Tunisia thanked the Egyptian leadership, government and people for their support to their people. The United Nations Security Council held a ministerial consultation session on peace efforts in Libya. The meeting covered efforts by the UN mission to overcome obstacles impeding the implementation of the adopted peace plan. During the session, the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy for Libya, Jan Kubis, briefed the Council on the latest developments in Libya's peace efforts. The session was attended by UN Security Council members, as well as Libyan Prime Minister Abdel Hamid al-Dibeiba and EU representatives. Iraqi Shiite leader Muqtada al-Sadr said that he would not take part in elections in October and withdrew his support from the government, distancing himself from the state at a time when deadly hospital fires have angered Iraqis. One of the most influential figures in Iraq, al-Sadr led a political bloc that emerged as the biggest in the 2018 parliamentary elections with 54 seats in the 329-seat legislature, and his movement has big sway. The impact of his announcement was difficult to assess, and al-Sadr typically wields power without holding elected office. Shelling by Syrian forces killed 9 people in Idlib region of the country's northwest. The death come amid an uptick in violations of a ceasefire deal that was brokered by Turkey and Russia in March 2020 and had since largely held. Since June, Syrian forces have stepped up shelling of rebel groups dominating the Idlib region, who in return have responded by targeting regime positions in surrounding areas. Saudi Arabia will host another downsized Hajj from Saturday, with only residents fully vaccinated against the coronavirus permitted. The kingdom seeks to repeat last year's success that saw no virus outbreak during the 5-day Muslim ritual. It is allowing 60,000 residents of Saudi Arabia to participate, higher than in 2020 but drastically lower than in normal times. People will begin to arrive on Saturday, a day before the start of the rites.
Right, welcome back. And Decent Life is an initiative endorsed by His Excellency President Fattah al-Sisi with the main objective of improving the quality of life in the poorest rural communities within the framework of the Sustainable Development Strategy Egypt Vision 2030 through decreasing multi-dimensional poverty and unemployment rates. To highlight this launching this big ceremony that was held on Thursday, we have with us over the phone Dr. Yomn Hamaqi, Professor of Economics. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon and happy Eid for all Muslims and the whole world.
Indeed, a happy Eid and blessed one for you and all your beloved Dr. Yomn. And we have followed up together this huge ceremony that was held on Thursday, launching, or the first conference to launch officially the Decent Life Initiative. What is the idea of the initiative so people would understand what is it all about and why is it considered a story of success?
Actually, the main, idea behind Decent Life is that since Egypt has succeeded to manage a successful economic reform, this economic reform has concentrated mainly on the financial and monetary dimension. And lately, the government declared that it is time now to move into the structural performance, a better structural performance, which is structural reform. This means that we have to go into the main real economic sectors, such as the industrial, the agriculture, and information technology. Why these 3 sectors specifically? Because these sectors can generate production, can improve the quality of life, can make a better distribution of income, since it could allow opportunities of job for the majority. From here it comes actually the real meaning behind Decent Life. It means that all Egyptians should, feel and benefit from this reform, this economic reform. It's not just taking into consideration the inequality of income distribution, the poverty rate that it can be considered high. And nowadays, when we talk about 29% poverty rate, this is a high percentage of poverty. And from here it comes that Decent Life is going to address you know, the rural areas that are suffering mostly from poverty and from deprivation, you know, the deprivation regarding, you know, government services, specifically sanitation and clean water, and all services that can build human capital like education and health, you know, services. And from here it comes that the main aim of Decent Life is to address these selected, you know, the project is addressing more than 4,500 villages. They started by a pilot of 1,500 as a pilot, selecting them on the criteria of poverty map in Egypt, and from here it comes that they are specifying the needs of people in these villages. On top of them, as it has been mentioned, you know, the sanitation services and water and health, as I mentioned, and they started to change the quality of, you know, these services so that people can feel that they are human beings, they can benefit from such services despite their poverty. And besides that, there is another dimension, which is quite an important dimension, the economic dimension, which means that from my point of view, actually, I'm looking forward that we can benefit from the productive capacity of the youth living there, concentrating on women, which means taking the gender perspective into consideration. And when we talk about, you know, these areas, we are going to find a very high rate of literacy and unemployment, specifically among women and among youth. That's why we have to specify economic zones according to comparative advantage of Egypt, and we have all data that may help us to do that. I know what I'm talking about because I have been working for that for more than 20 years. We have investment map, we have studies to specify in each governorate what are you know, the resources existing and the comparative advantage regarding the industrial sector and the agriculture and information technology, as I have mentioned. And this is going to help to upgrade the skills of youth there, and this is what we need to do it intensively. By selecting youth, but directing and coaching them to opportunities of job according to the investment map, and then upgrade their skills so that to cope with the requirement of the opportunity of job. And this is the way how you can develop the area, taking into consideration, you know, the economic empowerment of poor people, which proved to be successful in all successful experiences, like China, for example. China succeeded to lift 750 person from the poverty in 10 years.
Yes, indeed.
This is by using the economic empowerment of poor people.
Dr. Yomn, here, when we read together some messages that were given by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi during the ceremony in his speech addressing people, he spoke about the launching of the new republic, a republic that is built on democracy, on civil, on modern civilization, and particularly social justice. How does this initiative respond to the social justice demands of people? We are aware that the 25th of January was based on the demand of social justice. So how does such an initiative respond to the social justice term?
You know, social justice can be considered as a cornerstone for any, development, because people cannot share in economic development activities without having this feeling of social justice. And from here it comes, this is quite important. And this is the main goal of Decent Life initiative. Why? Because when people can feel that they are treated as a human being, that they have needs, and they are living in a better situation of life considered to what they used to have, I believe this is the first step, And then Egypt started, from 2 years to concentrate on the superiority of law, and that all Egyptians should be treated equally, according to law. And this is quite important, It's quite important for social justice, actually. And from here it comes that we need to enhance this feeling of social justice by improving the quality of life for poor people, by opening opportunities of job, by upgrading skills so that they can have such opportunity. And this, from my point of view, can achieve the sustainability of the decent life for people living in villages.
Yes. Also, this initiative or this huge project has made something that has not been made before. We're speaking about connecting state institutions with the civil society, with all the ministries and the NGOs and the private and public sectors all coming together for concerted efforts in order to beat the multi-dimensional eradication of poverty project, or this Decent Life Hayat Karima initiative. How do you view that, and how is this important for such a united efforts in order to achieve the goals that we are aspiring for?
This is a very good question, actually. Why? Because in all successful experiences, we can feel and see that the institutional capacity building was quite built in a good way, so that to achieve the goals and fulfill, the sub-goals that have been specified before. And this is quite important for decent life, and you can see that from the beginning, the President Sisi was actually taking care of that by specifying in each village who is responsible to, as a coordinator for the responsibility of taking into consideration managing activities, and how these activities are linked, like we mentioned, by all stakeholders, like, businessmen, civil society, universities, and so on. So this is quite important for guaranteeing the successful of such a project, because there are different sides and stakeholders that are involved, as we have seen in this project. And I believe that by coordinating and monitoring the performance of each of these stakeholders, we can achieve the results required, inshallah, hopefully.
Hopefully. Dr. Yomn, finally here, let me ask you of how the Egyptian citizen grasp such a huge initiative, and how the world are seeing what is happening in Egypt.
Actually, it's starting by in each villages that have been completely neglected for the last decades. They are starting to see that there is work done, and nowadays for their benefits. In each of what you have seen in the ceremony, in each villages, when you see that, equipments are going into to build, hospitals, to build schools, to build, the government service center in order to help these people to build a hospital. All this all these symptoms are very important to clarify to people that nowadays the government is taking care of them, is taking care to improve their quality of life. And from here it comes that nowadays there is a responsibility for these people nowadays. How they are going to respond, to how extent they are going to benefit from these services. What are the responsibility to protect these services from one perspective, and from another to be productive, like I have just mentioned.
Yes, indeed. Dr. Yomn Hamaqi, Professor of Economics, we thank you so much for being with us over the phone and for your input here. Turning back to our discussion, and indeed Decent Life, or this first conference that was held for the official inauguration of Decent Life and the launching of the new republic. Decent Life is an initiative endorsed by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi with the main objective of improving the quality of life in the poorest rural communities within the framework of the Sustainable Development of Egypt's Vision 2030. Moving on with our discussion, first let's have this report and we'll come back.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi inaugurated the first conference of Decent Life National Project to develop the Egyptian countryside. During the popular event, the head of state honored a number of distinguished figures. The president addressed the conference, which took place at the Cairo Stadium, watched a documentary film on the project. In his speech, President al-Sisi praised the achievements performed in last years, saying that the Egyptian people's determination helped perform many national great projects. The president also hailed the diverse capacity of the Egyptians, stressing that Egypt has the military and political capabilities to protect its interests. The head of state thanked the armed forces and police for their sacrifices for the nation. Sisi also tackled the issue of the Nile water and assured Egyptians that the state is exerting its utmost to protect the rights of its people. The president said that Egypt's national security, including its rights, is a red light that cannot be crossed. He reiterated Egypt's requirement that Ethiopia signs a legally binding agreement on the filling and operation of the dam. The event was attended by a number of ministers, public figures and media figures, businessmen, representatives of the Egyptian regional and international institutions, in addition to thousands of citizens representing all governorates. The agenda of the event included a number of success stories in the initiative from different governorates. Decent Life National Project connects state, civil society, the private sector and other development partners in Egypt and beyond, with a global goal to eliminate poverty in poor villages.
Right, welcome back. And during this big ceremony, the president gave a speech in which he addressed people, accommodating them and speaking with them frankly and transparently on different issues concerning Egypt and the future of Egypt. To highlight the issue, we have with us over the phone Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Yes, reading into the speech of the president, because the president actually addressed three important areas. The president spoke about the future of Egypt. The president addressed people or this huge project, and then he addressed an issue that is of much concern to Egypt. Let me here take your reading to the president's speech.
I am following this. I am following what we call the economic reform of Egypt, which is a courageous decision taken by the leadership and accepted by the whole people. And without the acceptance and the support of the people, it wouldn't have this success. The first step is to make our demand issues as regular as possible. Here we are talking about the deficit in our budget. We talk about the debt burden. We talk about growth rate, and we have succeeded to do that successfully. Now we came to the supply side of the reform. We want to produce more. Then we went to industry, went to agriculture, more building in the housing sector, new cities, fishery, name it. And it seems that we are doing a good job there also. The third step, which is very important to me as a citizen, I want to feel that parallel to our economic growth, that we are also taking care of the needy classes. And we go everywhere in order to make those classes feel that what the government and the presidency are doing is for the sake of every single Egyptian, with more care and more attention to the needy classes, wherever they are, Upper Egypt, Red Sea, Sinai, western part of Egypt, and also in the housing problem, where we succeeded to build new areas in order to move those people who were living under the acceptable rate or acceptable way of life to another, totally another way of life. Then also we are supplying them with education, with health care, with services, and here the President was keen that all the services should be provided in a better way, very fast, and in a proper way. So the layman, any citizen should feel that what we are doing is also for his sake, for the sake of the whole economy, but to feel that we are distributing our income along all the Egyptians, and that all of them feeling a much better life and much better services.
Indeed. Also, during the speech of the president, I'm focusing on the speech because the speech was part and parcel of such an important ceremony that has spoken of everything or every concern of the Egyptian citizen. And part of it was given to the national security of Egypt. That was a message of culmination to people. The president here spoke about two issues that go in parallel. The wisdom policy of Egypt, and at the same time the national security of Egypt as a red line that should not be jeopardized or compromised. How did you read the message that was given by the president in such domain?
I understand it if I know that the Egyptian policy and the Egyptian foreign policy especially is as old as 2,000 years before Christ. And we have all the time and all the patience in order to solve our problems. And if we talk about national security, we have many issues here. The internal security and what was happening, whether in Sinai or near our western border, and thank God that our armed forces succeeded to finish all the threats coming from the far east and the far west of the country. And I recall here the speech of our president in Mohammed Naguib base when he put red lines there. Nobody can cross the red line of the Egyptian security. Mm-hmm. We have another issue, which is the Ethiopian dam.
Yes.
And technically and frankly, if you study quite well this issue, you will find that the water is enough for everybody. And nobody can take 1 cubic meter of what Egypt should have. So that's why it explains why we are so patient. We have all the time, and it seems that that our authorities, the technical authorities, are ready to face any problem there. And we shall not lack water any time, and if this happens, then it will be another issue. But up till now, we are sure that the water will continue coming to Egypt and Sudan. The problem that we have a very stubborn government in Ethiopia, and we have to show them that this stubbornness is not in their favor at all. If they cooperate, then they will have much more results, better results for their own country than to Sudan and Egypt. So I understand as an old diplomat the patience of Egypt, which we used it several times, that if you just close your eyes and be careful for the coming few years, then any problem will be solved, because Egypt is old and rational enough to solve any problem which can face on our borders.
Yes, here also the president spoke about a very important issue. I mean here this kind of two statements that really strengthen the meaning, which means that the president here spoke about Egypt, its strength and its tools, the political, the military, the economic one that gives it the mighty or the strength to be able to achieve its goals from one side. But he also stressed on his urge for our brothers to sign this binding agreement for the interests of all our nations. How did you view this contrasts in statements, and how does this strengthen the meaning of what the president here emphasized on?
Here we read many messages and different messages coming from the president's speech. First of all, of course, he wants to make us all satisfied that the government is taking care of all the details, that we are in good hands concerning these problems. And of course, he cannot tell us all what is going on, because as a negotiator, I cannot tell you what I am doing or what really is in my mind. But what I can tell you that be happy, be satisfied that we are doing all what is necessary, and more than what is necessary, that we are quite sure we shall reach a solution. Another message is to the other side, which is a brother country of Ethiopia, telling them that please cooperate with us, because our history tells you that those who cooperate with Egypt win much more than those who make problems with Egypt. And as I always say, that we are a very old country which has always maintained good policies, and all those who differ with us, they followed us after decades, because our foreign policy is fair. It takes in consideration the rights of every single partner. So we hope that day after another we convince Ethiopia and its leadership more and more that cooperating with Egypt is much better, that we can reach a solution with them.
Yes.
Taking in consideration that we will never let 1 centimeter of our water unless we got it, because this is a matter of life or death.
Existential matter, very much indeed, Your Excellency. Now, I guess we move to another, of course, The future of Egypt remains with all our confidence in the hands of our leadership. And now we move from this topic to another important topic that is happening in the region and is also of importance, Lebanon. And Lebanon's crisis deepens as the Prime Minister designate quits over cabinet deadlock. Before we start with our discussion, let's first have this quick report and we'll come back to you. Please stay with us, Ambassador Bayoumi.
Okay.
Lebanese Prime Minister-designate Saad al-Hariri stepped down on Thursday, saying he was unable to form a government 9 months after accepting the challenge. Al-Hariri's decision takes the political process back to square one, and there is a clear risk of many more months of drift. Lebanese President Michel Aoun will now have to call on Parliament to pick a new premier-designate who will be tasked with assembling another cabinet. Al-Hariri told reporters after his meeting with Aoun that it was clear that they would not be able to agree, noting that the president had expressed the same opinion. Aoun's office hit back, saying that Al-Hariri was not ready to discuss amendments of any kind, leaving the door to discussion closed. In an interview with the Lebanese media, Al-Hariri once again accused Aoun of hampering the process by insisting on a cabinet chair that would effectively give his team a decision-making vote. After al-Hariri's announcement, sporadic clashes between the army and protesters flared on Thursday, leaving an unspecified number of people wounded. A few dozen protesters clashed with soldiers who fired rubber bullets to try to clear roads near a major sports stadium in Beirut. The premier-designate's exit leaves Lebanon rudderless amid a deepening economic crisis that the World Bank has branded as one of the planet's worst since the mid-19th century.
Right, welcome back and addressing the Lebanese crisis as it deepens after the resignation of the Prime Minister-designate Saad al-Hariri. Continuing with you, Ambassador Bayoumi, and this is another crisis that is hitting the region. How did you read the resignation? Hello? Hello?
Yes, as you will know, yes.
Yes.
Lebanon is very important because Egypt's border started as Laziqiyya in Syria. In all our history, our army went there to defend the Arab and the Egyptian national security there. Whether it is our king almost 2,000 years before Christ, or Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, or Ibrahim Pasha, we always keen, and we were keen always to protect this part of our region.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, on the west, of course, we are keen of the Libyan security. On the north, we are keen of the Syrian security against the threat from another neighbor. In Sudan, we are helping Sudan to keep its independence. So the question in Lebanon is a little bit complicated because of the tribes, and every tribe thinks that this is the end of the world. And this is the worst thing. We do not, as Egyptians, understand it at all, because we are a highly unified country. The people in Egypt, whether in Aswan or Alexandria, are the same people. In Lebanon, unfortunately, they adopt a policy where each tribe has the right of ruling a part of the country. And all of a sudden, it collapses. And to show exactly the measurement of the collapse, that the first time I went to Lebanon, $1 equals by that time 2.5 lira, Lebanese lira. Then last year it was 1,500 lira. Now it is 4,000. Oh my goodness. How can a small country like Lebanon live like that? And especially that Lebanon is a country of services. Lebanon is not producing anything except services, and most of it tourism and, of course, finance and banking and many Arab countries and many Arab businessmen are investing in Lebanon. But here we have a conflict between the tribes. It seems that the presidency and Hezbollah are against any proposal that came from Saad al-Hariri.
Indeed.
As a Muslim Sunni to compose his government.
Yes.
And Saad al-Hariri came to ask for advice from Egypt. Then our Minister of Foreign Affairs went there. And really, I recall here, since long time when Lebanon was taking good care of the Egyptian advices since Gamal Abdel Nasser. I remember President Nasser one day proposed the name of a president in Lebanon, and all the Lebanese followed the advice of Gamal Abdel Nasser, who, by the way, has 5 statues in Beirut up till now.
Yes.
I hope to restore this and to make the Lebanese trust a country like Egypt and to stop this conflict among the parties and tribes, which is not bringing Lebanon to any good position.
Yes, here you pinpointed your finger, Ambassador Bayoumi, on the main important point or the main hurdle here. And this was said by Mr. Hariri here when he said it was clear that he would not be able to agree on a cabinet position with the president. He said exactly, or there was this kind of trade of accusation between both sides. They said that the president and his party are trying to dictate appointments to gain veto power to their allies. And the same accusation was reiterated by the other side or by the Lebanese president. Here with the Lebanese severe, and we're speaking about a severe economic depression, the worst that has hit Lebanon. How do you view here the situation, and how do you view a breakthrough to this problem?
A breakthrough could happen if we have good leaderships who can talk reason, who can put the benefit of the country over any other benefit or any other party or tribe. And it seems it's not an easy job. We have to encourage the real Lebanese people in order to come to reason and to not to vote to those who are thinking about themselves and their tribes. It's not an easy task at all. I don't know really. We are still early than reaching a real solution for this specific problem. I am afraid that many of the leaders in Lebanon are hiding something in their pockets, and many crimes were committed during the time. That's complicating the situation.
Yes.
And maybe if they trust a country like Egypt and the leadership, like the Egyptian leadership, maybe they can reach a solution among themselves with the guarantees which Egypt and maybe the Arab League can provide them.
Indeed, indeed. Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you so much for being with us over the phone here. And definitely we hope for our brothers in Lebanon to put reason and the priority and put the interests of their country as a priority. The region needs stability, and definitely Egypt has always been supporting Lebanon. It was so obvious how the leadership has dealt with Lebanon in the past period. As we are approaching Eid al-Adha, we hope for all our brothers stability, prosperity, and all blessings. I guess that brings us to the end of this episode of our program Arab Affairs. Many thanks for watching. Next Saturday will be another important Arab file. Until then, it's goodbye.